Welcome back. Today we're going to discuss how to create a visual plugin and data editor inside AzStudio. We're going to be using that package we created in the last episode to access the data. Getting started, let's make sure that AzStudio is not running. We're going to be modifying its plugins, and we can't do so while AzStudio is actually running. After you've made sure that AzStudio is closed, open up Visual Studio, and you'll see a Sandbox Plugins project already set up for you. Let's open that. Just like the Packages project, this is a C# library, plain and simple. First things first is you'll want to make sure that you have the correct version of .NET selected. Go into the application and make sure that 4.5.2 is your .NET framework. Of course, we'll want to add our favorite reference, which is the link reference. So we'll make sure that that is in there. And it is. So we make sure our system.data.link reference is added to the project. The next thing we'll want to do is make sure that we have the right packages installed in our project. There's three major ones that we're going to be concerned with. AzStudio Common, which is our base libraries that are used with Azure. AzStudio Visual Common, which controls all the visual libraries that you need to write plugins into AzStudio. And of course the Sandbox Common plugins that we just built in the last project. Great, we've installed the correct packages. One final set of references needs to be added. We've already done it here for you, but you'll want to add the DevExpress, extra forms, and extra controls libraries to your project. These are the base graphical controls library that we use to write our graphical components in AzStudio. One more convenient step that we've done with this project, and you should probably do in yours in the future, is to create a PostBuild event that copies the DLL, basically the plugins package, into the plugins directory for AzStudio. That way, after you've built, AzStudio can be launched and automatically pick up your changes. It's a real time saver. Just remember, AzStudio has to be closed down for the plugin to be overwritten. Otherwise, the file is locked. For purposes of this lesson, we've created a couple of files to get you started. One is a constants file, basically what our group name will be when we build our plugins, and second, what we want our tile background image to be. We have hundreds of these background images already picked up for you and installed in AzStudio. Pick whatever color suits you the most or suits your context. Next, we've created your first interface. AzStudio plugins work in two sections. One is the class that acts as the interface between AzStudio's host program and the plugin that you'd like to launch. These are called interfaces, and you have to have one for each tile that you wish to expose to the user. Each tile or each plugin has its own unique ID. Make sure that you fill this out with a unique GUID every time you create a new interface. AzStudio's role-based security manager will detect when you add a new GUID to the interface and will automatically register it as a sysadmin only tile until you edit rights further. New tiles that are added to the system can only be viewed by system administrators until their tile rights are modified. To modify tile rights, go into AzStudio, go to the Security submenu, and select the Tile Security Manager. This is where you can add different tiles and different roles. By linking the tiles and roles, you grant access to those roles to those tiles. Every tile must have a unique ID. If you do not have a unique ID, or you provide a duplicate ID, the system will warn you and refuse to load your tile. Tile interfaces can get very complex. They can be their own submenus, they can register themselves with other tiles, they can communicate with the rest of the infrastructure automatically. But the basic tile interface has two components. It descends from the base AzStudio plugin and implements the IAZ root menu plugin. In AzStudio, plugins self-register with the different menu layers they'd like to be presented in by implementing the interface. The IAZ root menu plugin means that this plugin will be only visible on the root menu. During the creation process, we provide a group name, a tile label, and a tile image name, and our ID so the system can register the tile. During the creation process, we provide a group name, a tile label, and a tile image name, and our ID so the system can register the tile. In a basic tile, the only other thing you have to implement is the item click. What do we do when the user clicks this tile? For now, we'll leave this empty. Let's build this tile, or this plugin. And once it builds, we should be able to open AzStudio and see our device types in the root menu. So we'll filter on device types, and there's our plugin, at least the tile for the plugin. As you can see, clicking it doesn't do anything, not yet. So let's get our plugin to actually do something. We'll have it show Hello World. We all love Hello World. Dialogues Helper is a class that's in the AzStudio Visual Common libraries, and there are a plethora of dialogues that you can use to speed up your development work. Let's build this again. Great, done. Now let's open up AzStudio and see what happens when we click that tile. So let's click. Ah, great, we get our Hello World and a nice clean dialogue. You'll notice that we've been typing in a filter, and the Sandbox plugin has automatically registered with that filter. It's automatically been registered with the security context. It's already been skinned, and it's already plugged into the AzStudio environment. That is, your plugin can read which environment, where your configuration data is, and who's logged in, all with just a few lines of code. But we'd really like this to do something a little bit more robust. So let's delete this and add in a new class. And we're going to call this the Edit Device Types Editor. This is our visual class, or will be once we're complete. But if you're like me, you really hate writing code, so let's open up AzStudio and have it write it for us. So we're back to our friend, the SQL generator. Now, in addition to generating stored procedures for us, SQL generator can also examine schema and produce code. In addition to generating stored procedure code, SQL generator can examine a table schema and generate an editor plugin for us. Let's do that. Let's first type in Sandbox. Now we were going to edit Sandbox device types, so we'll select that, and then we'll generate an AzStudio editor. It's going to want 3 pieces of information for us. First piece has already been filled out, but the other 2 we can't really figure out from the schema reference. That's okay. We've already done it in the Visual Studio project. So we grab these pieces and cut and paste them into this dialog, press OK, and voila, we have an editor. Or at least a great part of the editor created for us. Let's go in here and replace this code. The current code is a little rough, so we'll change a few things to get it all working. The first thing we're going to want to do is add our namespace that we created in the Sandbox Common package. That's where our data access is, so we'll need to include it. We'll also want to change some column headings because the system just didn't quite know how to do it right. Device type ID, and let's do device type name. We'd like that to show up. We'd also like to change the dialog title to device types. It's cleaner. Okay, and one last step is to point the code to the correct data classes. Right now it doesn't quite understand what to do. That's okay. We got it right here. And we'll just do a replace in 4 places, and we are complete. There we go. We now have an editor for Sandbox device types. Great. So the last piece we have to do is make sure that we launch this editor when the tile is clicked. Pretty easy to do. You'll notice that we didn't create an actual control or form. We simply created the class that's wrapping the control. AzStudio already has the ability to generate the UIX in a consistent and clean manner and bind it correctly with no work on your side. Now let's rebuild our plugin. If you get a DLL error on any of these builds, it means that the AzStudio is still running and you're trying to build and replace the DLL that it's currently in use. An important point here. Sandbox plugins are using the Sandbox plugin package, but this package isn't installed in AzStudio itself, and that's fine. But if we tried to launch the plugin now, the DLL would be missing this library DLL. So, the first time you reference a third-party or extra package DLL, you'll need to take it and copy it into the AzStudio plugins folder. AzStudio will automatically load this common library for us now, and any of the plugins we write that reference it will be able to see it. It goes for any third-party packages that you happen to use in AzStudio, including visual controls or libraries. Just drop them into the plugins folder and all will be well. Okay, great. Now that we have our plugin built, let's launch AzStudio and see the difference. Now let's go back to our plugin interface. Click it, and as you can see, we can see data, or at least we think we can. Let's check that. Let's put in device small, device medium, and device large. Now, let's play a neat trick here. Let's change our data connection to the production database and see if we see the same data. Refresh. Oh, look, it's disappeared. Let's change our data back to dev and refresh again. There's our data. This is showing you that the tile is reactive. It understands the environment and the data connection that you've asked for universally, and you haven't had to code any special code for this. It's just working right. This is a real concrete example of how the system works under the hood. Essentially, all the code that's in the AzStudio common libraries and the data access libraries understands context. And because it understands context, and because that context can be driven remotely, you don't need to have configuration data locally with your product. Let's go ahead and take some time and add the other two editors, the device states and the devices themselves. So before the next video, go ahead and create a device states interface and editor and a Sandbox devices interface and editor. Don't worry about the foreign keys or any special editors for the grids themselves. We'll be taking care of that in the next lesson. Basically, we'd like you to get some experience in extending the AzStudio plugin library and using the SQL plugin generator tool. If you get stuck, contact your Monza support representative and we'll walk you through it. Thanks for watching.